It's time once again to slip into your camo, grab your bow, and join us out in the field for another episode of the Up North Journal. The Up North Journal crew is knocked and ready to rock for another exciting adventure. So let's step outside and hit the trail.
Welcome back to another episode of the Up North Journal, everybody. I'm host Mike Adams, sitting in the cabin tonight with Dan DeFaw. Before we get started, we want to help you save some money.
That's right, folks. Don't forget to use our promo codes to save that money. And let's start off with buckbaits.com. That's right, the brick and mortar store of Buck Baits down at Sterling Heights, Michigan at 15 and Dodge Park. Go over there. If you're on the website, buckbaits.com, use the promo code UNJ20. That will get you 20% off your order.
For those of you who are looking for Easy Cut products, make sure you go to easycutproducts.com. And when you're there, use the UNJ promo code UNJ15 off to save 15% off your order.
And let's not forget Lincoln Roan over at packermax.com. It's never too early, never too late to think about the Packer Max. Go on over to packermax.com, use the promo code UNJ25. That'll get you $25 off your order over at Packer Max Outdoor.
For those of you looking for some new firearms and firearm products, make sure you go over to theislandarmory.com. While you're there shopping, use the promo code UNJ10 to save 10% off your order there.
If you shot that bird of a lifetime and you want it mounted, don't forget Troublesome Creek Taxidermy. We've had them live on the show. We've talked to them. You want to get 10% off your order, go to Facebook, go to troublesome.creek.7, find their website. If you go to our website, UNJ, make sure to click on the button to download the form. You get 10% off over there using the code UNJ10.
Looking for that game call, whether it be a squirrel, whether it be goose, duck, deer, make sure you go to JPO Game Calls. Look for them at jpogamecalls.com, and while you're there shopping, use the UNJ10 promo code to save 10% off your order.
And Miller Deer Tracking, the man that seems to never sleep during deer season. Get 20% off your next deer tracking using the promo code UNJ20. Look for Miller Deer Tracking on Facebook or give him a call over at 810-240-4891.
Looking for the hottest new plastics to take on the water, whether it be hard water or soft water? Make sure you go over to southern.indiana.baitco.com. While there, use the UNJ promo code UNJ10 to save 10% off your order.
Deer Camp Coffee, folks. We drink it every night on the show. You want to try it? You can go to the brick and mortar store at 15 and Dodge Park at Deer Camp itself, or go to deercampcoffee.com. Also use our promo code UNJ10. You get 10% off your order. And don't forget, get a bag of the UNJ medium roast blend there as well.
All right, Danny, where's our live view camera to look from tonight?
Welcome back. Another live episode this Wednesday night. And believe it or not, we've pulled it off, folks. That's right. What you see is two ships passing in the evening just for Up North Journal.
Passing in the night?
I think, no, it's not night yet.
Evening. Okay.
Evening. I had to make sure I had the right time, but there you go. Live on Lake St. Clair. The busy season, we have boats going upbound and downbound. And it's 60 degrees, and I bet you it's a little bit cooler with that wind blowing.
Probably is. It's cool, definitely cooler than it is in here right now.
Right, exactly.
Good gravy, is it hot tonight in here?
So, the last couple times we've done that shot, the boat is come and gone, and we finally but we pulled it off.
All we have is the open body of water.
Right? People are like, yeah, way to go. Nice live camera there. But we did it. We pulled it off, got both boats in the shot, and we are back after a couple weeks. Poor you.
Work.
Well, you gotta
work got in the way. If I don't work, I can't keep the lights on in the cabin here. So
exactly, and then we gotta have the lights on, even though this shining face could brighten it up in here.
No comment.
Right?
No comment.
We are back. This is the last show of August.
Where's the year went?
You know what? Well, it's kind of been speeding like a
freight train.
Like a freight train. We're heading into September. We're heading into cider season.
Early goose season.
Early goose season starts the 1st. And this show tonight is our August episode for the Daily Press. And tonight we're going to have another person on that has to deal with the show. As you go to my screen, we can show you the latest. I do believe this is the latest poster they have posted. They've added
I'll do you one better. I've got it over here.
There you go. Look at that. Just reminder everybody, November 3, 4, and 5, the UP Ice Fishing and Hunting Expo is going to happen up on the UP State Fairgrounds. The biggest and best ice fishing and hunting expo in the UP of Michigan. So you can see there's a bunch. They've added a few other people there as well. So more and more people are getting on board with being there, and it's going to be a fun show, to say the least.
That's right, because we're going to be there.
That's right, we are going to be there. And like you said, early goose season's going to start. I think I've seen a couple bucks on Facebook taken in velvet, because there's other states that are opening up,
I believe.
Yeah, so we're getting to that point. We're getting into fall, which is typically most of your hunters start kicking around the idea of hunting. But we're just getting into also some good fishing. And, we you're right, Tammy, this is the last show of me being 54.
I forgot about that.
Right? So,
do tell. You're getting old.
Yeah, I'm getting old. Monday's my birthday. I'm going to give everybody that I can take Labor Day off in my honor.
No. Month of Danny.
Actually now Denise is September 10th.
Oh man, 2 months.
So we've got the month of double D birthdays.
All right.
Anywho, fall fishing coming up, but everybody goes out there. Everybody saw that Adam and I were out fishing. But what's it take really? You got people that go out there. We're throwing spinner baits. You go drown worms. You go out there in a boat. You go there in a stream.
How do the fish get there? Who takes care of them?
There's certain things that happen in this state that I think we
take for granted.
We take for granted, and we definitely have never had a DNR fishing biologist on, so I think we should.
Without further ado,
there you go.
Tonight we have John Bauman from the Michigan DNR Fisheries Division. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, good evening, folks. Thanks for having me.
Hey, glad you could join us tonight. And you are a fisheries biologist for the state of Michigan. Is that right?
That's right. Fisheries Division within the Department of Natural Resources.
Okay, so that's a big, long title that says that you work with the fish. Specifically, what do you get your hands into that helps us fishermen out on the waters?
Well, a large part of our job is routine monitoring of inland lakes and streams, water bodies in general. Another large part of our job is surveying populations to see where it might make sense to expand fishing opportunities through stocking. And, of course, the follow-up surveys that take place after stocking to make sure it works. Biologists do the analysis for the surveys that are conducted and write the prescriptions for water bodies that are stocked, and we write reports for lakes that maybe don't need stocking. Stocking is a great tool, but it may not be needed everywhere.
I love the term prescription, writing a prescription. I first kind of got that in the outdoors, prescribed burns. You write a prescription for a burn on a field or a section of land, but you're writing prescription for stocking. It's the health that to me kind of coincides with the health of the fish or the health of the lakes or the things that are in the water that the fish feed on. So you're writing a prescription. You're kind of like a doctor.
I hesitate to call myself a doctor, but I do see the analogy there. Yeah, our goal is to improve people's quality of life, right? And we have the means to draft prescriptions that improve aquatic resources to do that, whether it's through stocking or habitat improvement or maybe a number of other means. But I think you're right on with that.
Then we need to get on somebody from the DNR for the deer side, because I want to prescribe 10-point November 15th, 8 o'clock.
Stand in front of you?
Twice daily. Something like that. But yes. But, it's just that fact that you see so many people, and right now I know there's a lot of fishing going on in this state, and this state is just incredible fisheries all over the state, no matter where you are, whether you're down Lake St. Clair, over on the west side, over by Holland, all the way up into your neck of the woods. But first, how did you decide, hey, I think I want to get into something like this? Where did that burning sensation for the outdoors and becoming a biologist, where did you do hunting and fishing as a child, and then it just kind of got into your blood when you were heading into college?
Earlier than that, I think, similar to most people, probably it's between 10 and 12. My family was from southeast Michigan, and so we used to have a cottage on Lake Erie, and spent a lot of time on the water, and was just always had that that attraction to water. And by the time I was about 10 or 12, we started camping a lot, months at a time in the summers. And a lot of inland lakes in Michigan, where state parks are located, offer good fishing opportunities for younger folks to kind of get introduced to fishing generally. And then I met a muskie fisherman, and was talking to that person about what they do to catch muskie, and I became just absolutely obsessed with northern pike and muskie for about 10 years, going anywhere I could in southern Michigan to try and catch those species. And that probably, I would say, late teens, that changed to largemouth bass fishing. I really liked tournament bass fishing, folks like Kevin Van Dam and Denny Brower, and they pitch jigs in really precise places to pull bass out of just the smallest of areas. And there was just something competitive and that I liked about that. So I really got into bass fishing and spent pretty much any amount of money that I made with my summer jobs on spinnerbaits and jigs. But so those early teen, late teen years, I think I really I fished a ton, 3-4 days a week. I did deer hunt, pheasant hunt, and rabbit hunt, but not as much. But in high school, what are you going to do after high school? And I just thought, well, my parents pushed me strongly to go to college, and I thought, I want to stay in Michigan, but I don't want to pay out of state tuition anywhere. So I went as furthest away as I could in the Upper Peninsula to St. Marie, while still being in state, and studied biology generally, but then focused on fisheries management specifically, and almost had a concentration in wildlife too, but mostly fisheries.
So, all right.
Was that just to get away from home? The distance? Get away from mom and dad's? Okay.
Yeah, that was I need to get out. I'm 18. And, as far as the world, right? All right. So you were into pike and muskie. Have you caught, what's your biggest muskie to date?
It's not impressive. It's maybe 38.
Okay.
Now,
that's a big fish. Anyway.
Have you caught, was that when you were a kid, or have you caught bigger when you got older?
The biggest I caught, I think I was probably maybe 14, 15.
Okay.
I'm on the low 30s, mid 30s now. I don't do as much muskie fishing right now as I'd probably like to, but no trophy or memorable size fish, I don't think, but certainly the numbers. And I probably did more pike fishing. I even, I guess what maybe introduced me to the Upper Peninsula part of growing up here for undergraduate or college was I'd go through the Upper Peninsula to fish the boundary waters in Quetico Provincial Park for pike, and so I maybe have more impressive marks for northerns.
All right, what's your biggest northern?
I think it's between 40 and 42.
There you go. That's awesome. That what puts up a better fight, muskie or pike?
I don't know for me if that's a difference. I feel like they maybe fight differently by the season too. And the reason I give a range is a lot of times when I've fished pike, especially, I never measure them. But
hey, as long as you're landing them, that's a catch for me. So you can tell me it was 54, and I'd be all right. No problem at all. It's like, hey, you get it to the boat, you get your hands on it, you get to release it. It's awesome. But that that burning desire, besides wanting to leave home and heading to the Sault Ste. Marie and getting out there and going to college. And then here you are, you worked on some outside, and now you work the Michigan DNR. What's your favorite fish?
ooh.
Got him stumped.
I did.
Wow. So I guess people that know me from work or from personal life would say my favorite fish is a sturgeon, but just because I have a lot of experience with sturgeon and steelhead and walleye, but I don't know if it's, it's probably sad, like a darter or something.
But that's the things, you don't talk to a person like yourself every day, so it's like, well, let's pick their brain a little bit. And for anybody wanting to know more about what our DNR does with fishing, you go to the DNR. Go to the DNR state website. If you look up fishing, they've got everything in here from a fish stocking database to you can look into the fishing side of it, and they've got everything for regulations, weekly reports, free fishing weekends, the fisheries, the Master Angler Awards, about tagged fish, but you just visit the website and you can learn a lot more about the fishing here in Michigan. And where are you currently working on right now as we head into the fall? What's your focus now? Does it change as the seasons change, or is it like a yearly plan thing that you follow?
It does change seasonally. So from pretty much mid-April until the end of October, our units are collecting as much field data as possible while the season's right. Following the end of October, our technicians have until pretty much December 31st of that year to get all of those hard data entered. We take aging structures, our technicians do, from many of the fish that they catch, and so they age those structures, and that data has to be input as well. And the biologists simultaneously are writing reports from data that had been collected the previous year. So we're this time of year, we're trying to plan our surveys 2 years in advance, and we're trying to write the reports that were based on survey data collected the previous year.
So the information you're gathering now, up until the end of the year, is really going to help 2 years from now in making decisions on whether to stock or to cut back on stocking or whatever you're going to do. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. It's like I know on the deer side of things, they got this new app. Reporting app, and they're using that and getting real time data during firearm deer season. This kind of off topic, but since I just kind of went down that road, is there any plan or any thought about using something similar on the fishery side for people to report catches?
Yeah, I've heard about it, but probably only through similar conversations that that you've had with wildlife. But I don't know that it's being considered for fish specifically.
Okay.
I think the most important thing is if to get the word out about tagged fish. If you get a tagged fish, get information back about catching, where you caught it, and whatever information they're looking for.
Well, along those lines with the tagged fish, how important is that into what you're doing in that data gathering from the anglers out there?
I think it's hugely important. So, Little Bay DNR, for example, we've been jaw tagging walleye for several decades as part of as kind of an add-on to the annual egg take. We take eggs out of Little Bay DNR that we then raise in hatcheries and rearing ponds to stock the entire Upper Peninsula. And while we have those adults in hand, we jaw tag them. So there's a long mark recapture study that helps us generate a relative abundance estimate. Mm-hmm. And when anglers catch those fish, we can they share the location. We share information about what the length or the age of the fish was the last time it was captured in our assessment. So a lot of anglers find that data pretty darn interesting. Mm-hmm. And now that we have several years of those data, we're able to make some inferences about fish movement, mortality, growth. So there's a huge benefit to anglers sharing that information with us and us jaw tagging those fish. Especially when you have a long-term data set like that, you can see one of the bigger findings is that it seems soon after spawning that walleye are moving quite a ways away from the spawning grounds, where maybe 20 years ago they didn't move as far, tens of miles further.
Is that them spreading out further? Is that just due to the habitat, the amount of fish in one fishery or one area? They're having to spread out further just to maintain the habitat?
So we believe it's related to some of the changes in water clarity that's occurred in northern Green Bay. Dry-sided mussels have been around long enough to where they're maybe negatively impacting the clarity of the water.
Okay.
And so there may be limited nutrients or food available, and walleye are they're a low light conditioned fish, and so if the sunlight is penetrating a little bit deeper, it may not be as favorable habitat for them. Doesn't mean that they aren't there. It's just it's not optimal.
Okay, interesting.
You just mentioned that I'm clicking on the website as you're talking, but that Green Bay tagging project has been ongoing since 1988. Have you seen any fish up your way from that?
Yeah, gosh, I don't think so.
Okay,
but I don't think it's uncommon to see a 20-year-old walleye.
Really?
I mean, there's fish in excess of 30 inches, especially this year, seem to be caught often. And gosh, how old is that? I don't know off the top of my head. Once they get that old, they become a little bit difficult to age, and there's maybe a little bit more air in that, but they do get pretty old. But I doubt there's any from '88.
That is awesome. I didn't know that project was going on for that long. So Adam Wade has a question here that I can answer about stocking walleye. Adam, if you go, this is kind of cool, Adam. If you go to the website, they actually have a database that you can click on the county, and John here is in Delta County, and so if you click on Delta County, they actually have a listing of all the species, and they have the date that they were planted, how many were planted, and where they were planted. So you asked about walleye, and there's been a few drops of fingerlings. One drop in the Escanaba River, there was 2.1 million released.
That's a lot of fish.
That's a lot of fish, right?
So when you plant those, what size do you typically plant?
So that's a good question, because what you see 2.1 million or maybe 150 to 300,000, and there's a big difference between those two numbers, and that's the size that stock out. Those million plus stocking events tend to be spring fry, so freshly hatched fish.
Okay.
Where the smaller numbers may be in the 100,000 to several 100,000. Those are spring fingerlings, so those are raised for about 35 days in a rearing pond, often collaboratively with a lot of local grassroots groups. Basin Great Lakes sport fishermen for a number of years have released a lot of spring fingerlings and even fall fingerlings that they've raised in some of their ponds collaboratively, and Fisheries Division 2 has stocked a number of spring fingerlings. So the spring fry are less than an inch, and the spring fingerlings, we shoot for about 2 inches. That's the ideal time to stock those out. And then you might see 100 to say 800 fish stocked, and those tend to be fall fingerlings, 6 to 7 inches preferably.
Okay.
Right, exactly that. According to your chart here, what I referenced, the 2.1 million, the average length was 0.35 of an inch. So just over a quarter, a little bit more.
About a third of an inch.
Right, third of an inch. But yet, if you kind of scroll, let's just hear real 8.6, 1,000 brook trout went into the water. They were 8 inches long.
There you go.
So, like you said, you might see a lot of numbers, but how big are those fish going in the water?
Mm-hmm.
And that it's just amazing, the sheer total of numbers that the state is planting for the fisheries that we have here in Michigan. It's just, it's kudos to you guys that are all doing this. And one of the questions that is being asked is, we talked about you being on the biology side. What is something you wish that the general public would understand about you, the DNR, and the fishery side of the department?
Good question.
So I guess the number one misconception is that I'm part of law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And that's somewhat of an unknown for some folks, that there are these different divisions within the department. There's a law enforcement division. They enforce game laws in addition to other state laws, and Fisheries Division specifically manages fisheries resources. And we do the routine stocking, the monitoring and surveys of populations. But other than that, I'd have to think about that for a moment. The first one jumped out at me right away.
But exactly that. It says DNR on your tag or your patch or wherever, but you're not all lumped in the same. There's so many divisions up. You've got the law enforcement, you got fisheries, you got the hunting side. There's many more out there, and like we talked before the show, he's been around this state. He hasn't been all the time hiding from his parents up in the UP. He did start a little bit further south, but he's traveled around Michigan, getting finally where he's at today up there, and just going around the state working with sturgeon, all those brook trout, walleye, and getting. What's the most enjoyable part to you of your job?
Being on the water on the good days and making it through the bad ones. there's some Yeah, I'm not in the field as much recently. As a biologist, there's certainly a large administrative component to the job, but I love the field work, and I certainly love the good days, but getting through the bad days it almost feels just as good.
A bad day of fishing is better than a good day at work any day of the week.
Right.
So he's on the water.
So let me ask you this part. You write a prescription. You're going to prescribe whatever. You're going to help prescribe walleye or whatever we come up with. Does it feel good if you're helping that day to release those your prescription out into the water? Does it make you feel good that, yeah, I did that?
It does. So I guess the second part, or the second answer to your question would be that I like that it's a form of long-term thinking. So depending on the species you're managing for, what you put in the river today you're not going to see the fruit of that benefit till 3-4 years from now if it's walleye, 30, maybe 50 years if it's sturgeon. For each of those different species, it's different, and I like being a part of projects that have those longer-term impacts.
That's interesting. That's a great way to look at it. It's like planting a tree. We plant trees not for ourselves. We plant trees for the people who are coming behind us.
Exactly. And one of the questions, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, kind of, but one of the questions is from a person from Indiana, just so you know, so it's not a trick question. But he wants to know, when was the DNR started in Michigan?
So there was the Department of Conservation, and then the name changed to the Department of Natural Resources, and the year that happened, I don't remember the exact year, but when did we change from...
1965.
Okay, but prior to that even, recreational fisheries in the late 1800s didn't exist in the capacity that they do now. There was a much greater focus on commercial fisheries, and it wasn't probably until the first 2 decades of the 1900s where we really saw the recreational value of inland fisheries, streams, inland lakes, and you really saw the Department of Conservation, later to be named Department of Natural Resources, shift to providing more angling opportunity for improving people's quality of life versus trying to have a commercial fishery in every single inland lake in the state.
And that all came out of, like, Teddy Roosevelt, what we call the modern conservation efforts, in the late 1800s, and it came to the state levels. And we look at Michigan, and some of the things that y'all have done on the biologist, whether it be fish or on the mammal side, hunting side. We've got the elk restoration that's just phenomenal. Wild turkey restoration here in the state is phenomenal. You guys are preserving, the sturgeon, the dinosaur of fish, and I've heard that y'all are working on grayling, bringing grayling back. Is that another thing that's coming or has come to the state?
Yeah, it's another one of those long-term vision projects. I'm not personally I don't play an integral role in that, but yeah, there's a brood stock of grayling being developed with the intent to restore certain streams with grayling where they may have existed historically.
That's cool.
That's all part of it, and what we're talking about tonight, I think is just awesome, because it's that little facts. Next time I catch a walleye up in the bay or something, I'll look at it and go, I know I'm going to help put this thing in the water.
Yeah, it's like, did John put you on the water?
Right, I'll ask him. Could you describe him? Right? But, it's just things like that. And, like we talked about, it's, as you're doing your job and seeing things, we talked about this in the show. We talked about how you like fishing, how you like to go basically any time of the day that you can get out, now that you have a little one, finding that time. But you also said something about when you are out on the water at night, in the dark, with just a light or whatever, working, you see the changes that 99.9% of us do not see.
Don't even recognize.
Don't even recognize. Describe that moment that you're out there and you see things happen.
Sure. So I'll describe one experience in lakes from fishing and the second from work at night in rivers. When you're fishing at night in the lake on a July day, it's been 85, 95 all day, those metabolism of those fish just shut down. It's too energetically costly for those fish to feed that hot and shallow water. But there's a point at, say, 10 p.m. to 2 in the morning where their metabolism turns on, and you hear the surface water breaking every few seconds in an inland lake. And as an angler, that's a you just wouldn't see that any other time of day. You wouldn't know that there was that much activity at night when everyone's sleeping. The second, at work in a stream, I've worked in a lot of different streams in Michigan, working at bug or macroinvertebrate drift and larval fish drift, and it's amazing from, say, May 1st through July 1st, how much a river changes by night, how these different species ascend the river, spawn, hatch, and their young out-migrate, and how the diversity and the timing changes, and it's so obvious that to a fly fisherman, I think they would find that just extremely fascinating, but just something that maybe most people aren't aware of that actually happens on every river pretty much in the state.
Yeah, I had no clue. I mean, there's things in there for them to feed on, but the timing of it and how all that works together, that's amazing.
Now, does that? So you said that happens at night. By morning, has it changed again?
I'd say the peak is I'd say 9:45 to 2:30 in the morning. That's the peak of when everything just drifts downstream. Again, during that May-June period. It maybe happens later in July as the sun's a little bit more directly overhead, but you see Isonychiid mayflies coming through first. I think some people call those the minnow mayflies, and so you've heard the term match the hatch if people are fly fishing, and you see those different species come through one week, and then another species comes through another week, and each of those different pulses of bugs are drifting downstream with a different larval fish, and there's probably some safety in numbers with that, so they all drift together. Now it's pretty fascinating.
Now, a question was asked: do you fish for fun? Which we talked about a little bit. You do get out sometimes for fun. So does that kind of give you a little insight as to, hey, I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'm going to use this as my bait of choice?
I've done that before, and it's worked well, but it doesn't work all the time. And I will say that as much as I do get out fishing, this year being the exception, I get out 50 to 80 times a year. But I wouldn't be able to guide. So that's where my skill level is. Not a guide, but I certainly drown enough things.
hey, join the crowd. But you mentioned that about the lake changing, and when Adam and I was out 2 Wednesdays ago, we got out, and it was getting towards the evening. We got out about 6, and he's right. It was quiet, but then the fish turned on, you could say, and then they were breaking the water. And that's kind of what led us to where we wanted to go, because we were by the shore, right? And we're like, well, everything's jumping or breaking the water in the middle of the lake. Well, let's go over there.
Right.
And sure enough, that's when we started catching fish. But that is awesome. I bet you that's got to be, I don't know if you work in groups or alone in numbers, or how does that work with you? But do you go out as a group when you do that?
Yeah, we often work at least pairs, at night. And I guess I would add one other experience to your previous question. Wading inland lakes, there's cold water inputs in certain places that you wouldn't know were there. And in periods of high water, like 2020, we set Great Lakes water levels for Lakes Michigan and Huron and maybe others. And there was a lot of groundwater saturation. When I was wading around some inland lakes, I'd feel going from, say, 68 to 58. In a really small area. So I thought, I'm coming back here tomorrow and I'm going to fish that. And I did, and it was surprising to me that the small area that would hold a pretty decent number of fish, just seeking that cold water input that I had found just wading through the shoreline.
Now, was that coming from a spring, or was that coming off of some runoff water, or what was causing it?
I think it was a seep, like a groundwater seep from a high bank.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I got to ask this question, because now that you're telling me you're working out in the dark, you're in the UP of Michigan. Okay. So, what have you ever been approached by a bear or a coyote or a wolf, or have you ever had that feeling you're being watched while you're in the water or anything like that?
I figure I'm probably watched, but I've never seen anything. Too amazing. Never seen any bear at night. Never seen any wolves. Maybe a coyote driving to where we were going to work. I've seen bobcat, Yeah, nothing, whippoorwills mostly.
Oh yeah, definitely hear those.
Nothing to make the hair on the back of your neck stand.
Right, because when I am up in the UP and up over on Crystal Falls, or at Crystal Falls, I'm usually fishing the Michigan Reservoir, is where we tend to go do some fishing, and that's just an amazing fishing there. But yeah, I just had to ask that because I've seen bear on shore there, deer, and all that. I was just wondering, here you are, you're on some stream in the middle of the woods.
Right.
There's got to be something staring at them, going,
right.
"What is that?" Right? But it's awesome. I think this is just it's so cool.
Being in that type of employment where you're out in the nature, giving back to nature and getting paid for it.
Okay. Do you have any little tidbit on you're out in the middle of the night? Are you getting eaten alive by mosquitoes?
No, I mean, it's good covering, long sleeve, repellent. That seems to do the trick. If it's the wrong time of year, you probably want a head net. But they're there, but you kind of get used to it. The hydrocyclid caddis patch is pretty brutal sometimes, but they don't bite. They just find any orifice they can find to squirrel their way into your body and kind of annoy you. But it's not too terrible.
Well, getting back, I got a question about when you're releasing fish. Say you're releasing 1 million fish, small fish, into a stream or into a body of water. What's the expected or presumed catch rate for 1 million fish? I mean, do you have like a percentage of like you expect to make it to adulthood?
Yeah. So can I use a different example of say 1,000 walleye in a small inland lake?
Sure. Yeah.
Just with 1,000 numbers might be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So, if we were to stock a lake at, say, 25 to 50 spring fingerlings per acre, the expectation is to have 1 to 2 adults per acre or more when it gets, a little bit more densely populated. And we'll stock every other year for a period of 10 years with the hope of having at least 2 to 3 strong year classes from those 4 or 5 stocking events within that time frame. And that's for a water body that needs to be maintained solely by stocking. If it's a new water body where walleye populations have declined and there's no longer natural recruitment, then we would stock 3 years consecutively, evaluate, and then maybe follow up every other year after that. But generally, it's every other year with the expectation that 1 to 3 year classes will survive with enough fish to provide a recreational fishery. And that's meant to mimic, how things happen naturally. Not every year is a boom year for natural reproduction. It tends to happen very intermittently, maybe once every 5 to 7 years.
Okay. And that's got to be an environmental impact that causes the catch rate to be higher naturally?
Sure, yeah. There's some levels where, some years where maybe there's a lot of panfish predators. This is maybe more of a problem downstate where 30 to 40% of a lake's biomass is panfish.
Mm-hmm.
You stock spring fingerling walleye in there, and they, that's lunch.
Right.
But yeah, so it's what species are in there already. Maybe the time of year wasn't right, and so plankton blooms weren't good enough prior to stock. So not every year is a guarantee.
Speaking of stocking, on the invasive side, are you seeing an uptick in that, or anything, something that says, yeah, we've got this species coming in? Have you run across anything like that lately?
Not related to stocking that I'm aware of, but being a manager for the Upper Peninsula, that's one of the highest priority management items for me is making sure some things don't get in some of the inland lakes, most specifically zebra mussels. There are a lot of lakes in the Upper Peninsula without your Asian water milfoil, without zebra mussels, and that's a good thing. And an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. To what extent we can prevent that from happening, we want to do that.
So to the average guy, gal that's out there, and hey, we're going to go to the UP, we're going to go up to, and we're going to fish, take the boat up, or maybe we're going to wade a stream, and we've got, our soft felt bottom waders. What can we, as the average fisherman going up there, do to prevent bringing some of these invasive species to that area? What's some of the simple things that we can do?
If you're bringing a boat, drain and dry, that's state law. If you're planning to move waders from one place to the next, there's good recipes for a disinfection that you can make, just using traditional household items that you can spray on the felt portion of those waders, or maybe consider Bugsol. So spraying that before going from one water body to the next is a good idea.
Is there any other piece of gear that we might bring that other than those two obvious ones, that we need to consider paying attention to?
None that come to mind right away.
And that's a really good one. We just talked about that. He does the work as the biologist, but we could do our part to help him.
Got to.
And make his job a lot easier. You still got to work, not make it that easy where he's never going to work. But it's just that like he said, an ounce of prevention is just like whether you take a boat up across the bridge, make sure it's dry, like you talked about. But us ourselves have to take a moment to look, make sure we're doing everything we need to do, not to transport anything that's going to cause him ill will, and he'll be yelling at us trolls down under the bridge for whatever, if we screw up.
Well, you should be doing that when you're going from lake to lake or stream to stream anyway.
Absolutely.
As far as transferring different species to a place they shouldn't be. So.
Exactly. How brittle is our ecosystem up with all the lakes? And like you said, there's some lakes up there that are pretty pristine. But how brittle is the ecosystem if something were... What would it take for it to go awry? How quickly?
The introduction of an invasive species is a good one. The zebra mussel, I'll use that example again. They're filter feeders, and they can digest a lot of chlorophyll A, which is the basic foundation of every lake's food chain. Chlorophyll is eaten by plankton. Plankton is eaten by larval walleye, for example, or a lot of other larval fishes. Larval fishes they grow into juvenile fishes, and they feed other juvenile fishes, and it just feeds its way up the food chain. And if you don't have enough chlorophyll, you're very limited at the topsoil as to what you can produce in fish biomass at the top. So, they're pretty fragile.
Right, exactly. And it doesn't take, once that species is introduced, it doesn't take long for them to turn that ecosystem upside down.
Right, and there are a lot of local conservation districts or cooperative invasive species management area groups that apply for grants to do things like having boat wash stations at public launches. If you were to do that annually, that would be cheaper than trying to remediate after an invasive species comes into an inland lake. So there's preventative measures that are far cheaper than trying to control an invasive once it's already made its way into a lake or stream.
Yeah, go back to that. An ounce of prevention is a lot cheaper
Than a pound of cure.
than a pound of paying for the cure, right?
Exactly.
That just goes to show you how brittle this really is. Whether you like you saw when you were out kayaking on Lake Michigan, how big that was, right? Now go up into one of those small inland lakes up there and have that turn upside down on you. Do you do anything with smelt?
Not much. I try to engage with anglers that have knowledge about smelt dipping locations, but I don't get very far with that, just like I don't get very far with brook trout anglers.
So basically you were told you wish you knew, right? And I'm not going to tell you where my favorite dipping spot is because you're going to go there.
Yeah, I'll give a GPS point. It'll be for some drainage ditch or something that
Over that guard hole over there.
Well, you talked about a GPS point, which kind of cracks me up when we were talking with Chad Stewart about the app. We talked about people marking where they shot their deer, and he's like, "Yeah, there was a few that were out in the water, and here and there." So, it's that. We're not going to tell you where my favorite spot is, but I was just wondering about that because I've heard that if you're in the right spot in the UP, that smelt dipping is actually pretty bountiful but you just got to know where to go. And it's like, and I didn't know if that was still that way, or were you trying to help out? But it sounds like you're just trying to get enough information to find out where they're at.
So I would probably agree with anybody that tell you that it's not what it was 30, 40 years ago. But the people that do find fish every year, they're stopping at these rivers at night, looking, they're taking temperatures. You know, if you said April 25th is the day that I'm going to go smelt fishing every year, you maybe hit it once every 4 years, because April 25th doesn't mean anything to the smelt. They're looking at light levels, they're looking at discharge levels and river temperature levels, and all of those things fluctuate within a couple weeks of each other. So if you put in the time to check every day and find the ideal window when they're there, you'll get some.
Yeah, it's not like it was when I was a kid.
Oh, no. I mean, as a kid, I remember the adults going with basically a net and a garbage can,
yeah,
spending the next hours cutting off thousands of smelt heads.
Yep.
It just was not, yeah. But
pair of little scissors.
Yep.
Yep.
We someone got to do the heads, guts.
The last time I went smelt dipping, I was in college at Eastern Michigan, and me and 3 other guys got this wild-haired idea to take off on a Friday night to go to the St. Mary's River and hit the break wall. And there were some adult beverages involved in that as well. But we actually caught quite a few.
There you go, see?
We got quite a few and proceeded to go back to the dorm and stink the dorm up. It smelled like fish for about 3 days.
Awesome, way to go. So heading into this fall, what's your biggest project on your to-do list that you've got to get done? I know you've talked about getting data put in and anything, but is there something that you specifically have been tasked with that says, hey, you got to have this done by Christmas, or it ain't going to be good?
Yeah, so we have some walleye population estimate surveys that were done this year and last year, and I need reports finished by the end of September for those. We also do walleye recruitment surveys where we go out at night and look for naturally reproduced walleye and or stocked fish that had survived through the year. I need to write a good number of reports summarizing the results of all of those surveys due by the end of September. When October comes around, it's time to see what prescriptions are up for renewal and look at the data and the information just to see if it's continuation in stocking is justified based on the data we collected and the reports we hear from anglers. So that's the month of October. And November, a week and a half is hunting. Maybe 3-4 days if I'm lucky. And then December, we tend to go on, it's kind of we have a biologist meeting generally where we discuss regulatory topics and up-and-coming management issues related to fisheries. And so we have a streamside facility that has a bunch of sturgeon in it right now. We've got to stock those out pretty soon. So that's probably the nearest agenda item. But.
Well, once you get past Christmas, you get into the new year, let's say 2024, we got hard ice season. Is there any time in that window an opportunity for you to get out and actually enjoy the hard ice?
I do. I've been doing more ice fishing, I guess, as of late than I have in the last 10 years. That's probably related to my purchase of a camera. It's kind of turned ice fishing into TV for me. And so I do get out in late January, usually early February, and then kind of the sampling season starts up again where we're analyzing some data that were collected in the winter. So we do some through the ice surveys looking at habitat, oxygen data.
At that time of the year, you get everybody flocks up to Low Bay to knock up in that area. How big of an impact do ice fishermen make on the actual biomass in that area? I mean, do they make a huge impact during that time, taking fish out to make a big difference?
We have staff specifically hired to measure that. And I don't have the numbers from this year or last year ahead of me. Again, we tend to be about a year or so behind in the analysis and then the sharing of those results. But it's something that is monitored annually through our creel census. And I believe there's the most recent data are available online. I don't have the link off the top of my head, but those data are available to the public.
Okay. Awesome. Again, go to the website, go over to Michigan DNR, go over to the website. You can frog around this website. You can find everything from when everything's being planted to regulatories and fishing spots and all that good stuff. But yeah, it just... I see we're getting towards the end of the show. Do you have any specific questions you need to ask him before we get to ask our favorite questions? Because he's a new interviewee.
Not right. I mean, we could talk about this all night because I've learned a lot. I've can rattle questions off for another hour, but we don't want to keep him up. He's got things to do. So, not specifically that stick in my mind right now.
Okay, so, well, like I said, it's time for our questions to you that, we ask all our new interviewees.
A little fun.
A little fun here.
Nothing serious.
Round out the show. So, you do some traveling up in the UP, obviously. So you're traveling around, whether you're going to a lake wish you knew or a river.
I'm not going to tell you.
I'm not going to tell you. But when you're traveling, what are you listening to on the radio? What's your go-to thing on the radio you're listening to?
Bluegrass or classic rock?
Classic rock,
Yes.
favorite band?
Classic rock favorite band?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. So I was a Doors Zeppelin fan. Zeppelin because there's just, you can never hear it all.
Right.
The Doors have just a lot less volume. Led Zeppelin, if you ever stand on a desert island and you can listen to one band, it'd be Zeppelin because it'd take you a week to listen to all of it twice or more. Yeah, so...
All right, so you're bluegrass, classic rock. Awesome.
Favorite bluegrass?
It's going to sound silly, but Steven Seagal's now, recently.
Okay.
It's actually bluegrass classic rock covers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, nice. That's good. All right, so you're traveling along, you're jamming to your favorite bluegrass or classic rock. Triumph is a good one. But your go-to snack, the thing you got to have in your vehicle with you as you're traveling along, what's your go-to snack?
Beef jerky comes to mind, but I don't know. I don't know if I eat it that often to be the go-to. As bad as it sounds, gas station food probably.
No,
Nothing wrong with that.
nothing wrong with that.
Those burgers that whatever's sitting under the heat lamp for too long, I'll eat anything.
Not picky. I like that.
Just don't tell his doctor.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. So it's when I'm out doing recreating, the rules don't apply many of the times. So
There you go.
Absolutely, got to take a vacation from being serious. All right, another question we like to ask. So Mike and Dan are going to come pay you a visit, and we're going to sit down, and you're going to make us a meal. And what meal would be your go-to meal from the outdoors that says, hey, you guys have got to have this? And what would it be?
there's two. One is spaghetti with venison, and the second is a stew that I make with bullhead.
With bullhead?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. What's in it? Or do you don't want to give away your recipe?
There's squash in it. It's mixed with rice. There's coconut milk, sriracha. I'll send you the recipes if you're interested.
Yeah,
You gotta send it.
that to me is the most different thing that we've had on the show in the 17 years that we've talked.
Yep, that is
cool.
Awesome. Okay, so we've had this great meal, and we're sitting down by the fire. We're going to have a few soda pops, and you sit back, you kick back, you go, Mike and Dan, you got to hear this story. This story resonates with me because whether you were young, old, it happened 2 hours ago. What would be the story that you would tell us that influenced you to that point that you wanted to tell us?
The story has to have influenced me. Huh. I think when I was 12, how much time we got here? 3 minutes?
You got as much time as you need to tell the story.
Okay. So when I was 12, I mentioned that we camped a lot, and every single day I went to this fishing pier at a state park, and I convinced myself I was going to catch a northern pike in this lake with a fishing off the fishing pier, which which is pretty hard to do looking back on it, from a fishing pier that gets fished all day and all night. And my mom or stepdad were with me pretty much every single day that I wanted to go in the summer. I went every morning at 8, and I went every night at 8 for 3 to 4 hours every single day for about a month and a half fishing suckers. And sometimes I would actually stay even into the night, and I started to see gar circling some of our baits, head to tail, 2 and 3 fish kind of connected in a circle. But I don't know, maybe after a month and a half, I did end up catching that northern pike. It's mounted as the first pike I ever caught. Like I said, I was 12. And thinking back on it, and being a parent now, it was great that they were present and that they encouraged me to do something, finish something. And I think back on that now and try, I just always think about that. And when I'm taking on big projects, you got to finish it.
That's cool.
Keep
that
going.
is awesome. Kudos to your parents for being that right behind you, letting you fail to the point you did it so much that you finally did succeed. That's awesome for them to be there. And that's a heck of a memory.
Yeah, it is, especially the first one.
Right? It's amazing, but that is awesome. And now you can pass that on down to your kids. So, it has been a heck of an hour.
An hour's already gone.
I know, right? Told you, once we get going, it's going to go by fast. Do you have anything else for him?
No, I think we're set for the show.
That is awesome.
So, with that being said, hang on. After we get done wrapping up the show here, when we sign off, we'll talk to you briefly and let you go. So don't hang up right away. But for those of you who are listening on the podcast, if you're listening over on iTunes, make sure you go over to iTunes and give us a review over there. That helps people who support us. And if you're listening here on Facebook or any of our other social media pages, give us a like, follow, share. Do the same for the DNR's website as well. Tonight, I think you got a really good look at the DNR is not what a lot of people portray as far
They're not
as
just guys in green
suits writing tickets.
Right, exactly. And, you go over there, do a little digging into their information on their fishing side, because that's what we talked about tonight we showed a lot of the behind the scenes. We heard exactly what we don't hear at the dinner table typically, or at the restaurant in whatever city you might be, about the fishing here in Michigan. And another thing, don't forget this show, courtesy of the Daily Press and the UP Ice Fishing and Hunting Expo, that will take place November 3, 4, and 5 in November. And we will be there. And on the screen, if you're listening to the podcast, go over to the website, go to the UP Ice Fishing website, Facebook page, take a look at the flyer, look at all the wonderful sponsors. We've interviewed a lot of these sponsors. There are so many more. They have added more last week. We've got one more month to go with another sponsor. I'm hearing it's going to be very interesting. And then we've got our big ending show in October with the whole crew from the Daily Press.
And don't forget, if you missed some of those interviews that we did with the Daily Press people who are going to be at the expo, just check back, go down our list there on our Facebook page, and you can listen to all those shows, or you can catch them over on YouTube. Is that right, Dan?
Exactly.
So, and like I said, give us a like, follow, share the show for us if you don't mind, please. That helps us, and it also helps people who support us. So, next week, we got anything lined up?
Next week, we're gonna, if everything works out, we're gonna talk fishing. We're gonna talk fishing in the lower northwest with a group of anglers over there who, they're just not a bunch of yahoo anglers getting together. They actually do some good for the community, do a lot of outreach stuff for the youngsters out in that area up in northwest lower Michigan.
All right. Sounds good. So that'll do it for us this week, folks. We'll be back again next week, same time. Y'all take care. We'll see ya next Wednesday. This episode was brought to you by PSC Archery,
Deer Camp Coffee,
Buck Baits,
JPO Game Calls,
The Island Armory,
Hacker Max,
Sunrise Archery,
and C3 Better the Hunt Technology.
Thanks for listening, and join us again here next week. Until then, remember, as we always like to say, if you're out on the water or in the woods, shoot straight and be safe. Until next week on the Up North Journal.